Have you ever felt trapped by life, as if the path ahead were completely blocked by an insurmountable mountain of problems, challenges that seem to sap all your strength and hope? How many times has your faith been tested by circumstances that seemed insurmountable, making you question every step of your journey? They went in search of something sacred, a statue of Our Lady, but what they found along the way far exceeded their darkest expectations. But before we dive into this transformative adventure, I ask you right now to write in the comments the names of people and relatives who need a special prayer at this time. We will add them all to our main prayer of the Rosary, interceding for each of them. There was a group of pilgrim souls, moved by unshakable faith and a silent promise of renewal, who decided to undertake a long and arduous journey to a remote place where a venerated statue of Our Lady rested. These were no ordinary people seeking a mere adventure. They were hearts thirsting for hope, families bearing the weight of illness, young people searching for purpose, and elderly seeking solace, all united by the same desire to draw closer to the divine and find answers to their deepest afflictions. Rumors of inexplicable healings and profound peace enveloped the sight of the statue, creating a sense of urgency and necessary sacrifice in their hearts. They knew the path would not be easy, that each step would be a test of physical and spiritual endurance, but the image of that Divine Mother, waiting atop a distant plateau, was a luminous beacon guiding their steps and instilling in them the courage to leave behind the comfort of home and face the unknown. The initial expectation was a difficult but rewarding path, filled with moments of reflection and the comforting company of fellow travelers. With the blessings of those who remained and hearts filled with a mixture of enthusiasm and apprehension, the group of pilgrims set out. The first few days were marked by the lush beauty of the surrounding nature. Gentle hills, crystal-clear streams, and the birdsong that seemed to bless their beginning. At every turn in the dirt road, new landscapes unfolded, reminding them of the grandeur of creation and the insignificance of their worldly concerns in the face of such majesty. They shared food and water, life stories, and testimonies of faith, and the bond between them grew stronger with each step, transforming strangers into a cohesive family. Their conversations initially centered on the reasons that brought them there, the challenges of their lives, and the hopes they placed in this pilgrimage. Laughter echoed along the trails as one helped the other overcome a steeper section, and the meditative silences were punctuated by collective prayers that reverberated like a heavenly chorus, sealing an invisible bond between them, a bond of faith and common purpose. However, the peace and lightness of the first few days began to dissipate as they entered a region of steeper and more unpredictable mountains. A devastating, unexpected, and furious storm descended upon them, turning the trail into a tangle of mud and slippery rocks. It wasn't just rain. It was a gale with lightning streaking the sky and thunder shaking the earth. Visibility became almost nil, and the temperature plummeted dangerously. A greater shock came with the thunderous roar of a rock avalanche, which, without warning, completely blocked the path ahead, burying the passage they had struggled to find. The landscape, once welcoming, became hostile, an insurmountable barrier that loomed like a petrified giant between them and their destination. There were no known detours, no suitable shelters in sight. The mountain seemed to close in on them, testing not only their physical resilience but the very core of their deepest convictions. The trail blockage and the persistence of the storm had an immediate and devastating effect on the group's morale. Initial optimism gave way to discouragement and, in some, cold despair. Conversation ceased, replaced by murmurs of doubt and silent lamentations. "Why are we following this path? Maybe it's a sign we shouldn't be here," one whispered, and the seed of giving up began to germinate. Physical exhaustion compounded emotional fatigue. provisions began to dwindle, and the prospect of being stranded there, without shelter or help, seemed increasingly real. Faces that had once radiated hope now reflected weariness and the bitter sense of having been abandoned. They looked at the insurmountable mountain, the incessant rain, and their own weakened condition, and the faith that had driven them this far began to waver, becoming a faint flame threatened by the gale of uncertainty and fear. The promise of healing and comfort now seemed like a distant and cruel mirage. Amidst the atmosphere charged with hopelessness, when most seemed ready to succumb, an elderly man in the group, whose eyes had seen many storms in his life, sat in the mud, closed his eyes and began to pray softly. It was not a prayer of angry supplication, but of surrender and trust. His words, though mumbled, were caught on the wind and reached the ears of others. Slowly and gradually, the example of this wise pilgrim began to have an effect. It was not just the words, but the serenity on his face, the steadfastness of his spirit, that spoke louder. A young man, previously head down, raised his head and saw in this man the embodiment of the faith they sought. He remembered the promise of their journey, the reason they had left home, not to avoid hardship, but to overcome it with the strength of the Spirit. It was a subtle turning point, a collective awakening that the real obstacle lay not in the rock in front of them, but in the mountain of doubts rising within each of them. From that moment of renewed hope, the group began to regroup. They saw the blockage not as an end, but as a challenge to be overcome by divine will, channeled through their joined hands. Some began searching for a weaker spot in the mountain of stones. Others used improvised tools and their own bodies to move the smaller debris, while the stronger joined forces to try to push larger stones. The work was Herculean, but now it was done with purpose and renewed energy. Each piece removed, no matter how small, was celebrated as a small victory, a confirmation that faith indeed can move mountains, not necessarily miraculously or instantly, but by driving action, persistence, and the discovery of a previously dormant inner strength. In a moment of apparent exhaustion, when they thought they had no more strength, a small crack opened up in the rocks, a narrow but perfectly navigable path to continue. It was the reward for their resilience and proof that persistence, born of faith, can reveal solutions where before there had only been obstacles. Finally, after days of overcome challenges and tested hearts, they sighted the plateau where the statue awaited. The storm had passed, the sky opened to a glorious blue, and the image of Our Lady, with her serene features and outstretched arms, seemed to welcome them in a divine embrace. It wasn't just the sight of the statue that filled them with emotion, but the profound realization that true transformation had occurred on the way there. They had encountered the worst. Yes, but within it, they discovered their own strength, the resilience of their faith, and the power of their union. Every pain, every doubt, every sweat shed along the way dissolved into a profound peace, a sense that everything was in its right place, that the healing they sought was not just physical, but primarily spiritual, a realignment of their souls with their greater purpose. In that sacred place, before the image of the Mother, they experienced the certainty that faith does not prevent storms, but gives us the strength to weather them, heals us from the wounds of doubt, and shows us that even in the greatest tribulations, there is a greater grace to be found. This story of the pilgrims, though a narrative, resonates deeply with the tribulations of our daily lives, doesn't it? How often do we encounter mountains in our lives? An illness that strikes without warning, a financial crisis that crushes us, a relationship that falls apart, the loss of a loved one, or simply the burdensome routine that steals our joy. Just like the pilgrims, our faith is constantly tested, and moments of doubt and despair may arise. But the message is clear. Faith moves mountains not only with thunderous miracles, but especially with the strength it gives us to rise, forgive, seek peace in our hearts, cultivate perseverance amid challenges, and cry out for more conversions and unshakable faith in our brothers and sisters. She teaches us not to retreat from the worst, but to use it as a stepping stone to get closer to the divine and our true essence. Remember, daily prayer is our journey, our tool to clear internal and external obstacles, and allows us to access that higher power. With this in mind, once again I ask, write in the comments now the names of more people and relatives who need a prayer, and we will add them all to our main rosary prayer. Which part of this journey, this metaphor about faith and overcoming, touched you most today? Did your own mountains seem a little less insurmountable after reflecting on this story? Leave your comment below. We'd love to hear your opinion and how faith has helped you move mountains in your life. Your experience can inspire and bless many others who read the comments. And if this message brought any light to your day, please don't forget to leave a like. It means a lot to us. Also, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, filled with stories, messages, and reflections that aim to strengthen your faith and bring hope to every step of your journey. May peace be with you,